There is a moment that happens before you know it has happened. Not a dramatic moment. Not thunder and light and a voice from somewhere above you. Just a quiet, almost imperceptible shift. Like the air in the room changed temperature by a single degree, and something in you noticed before your mind caught up. A sense of arrival. A sense that something has been set in motion that you didn't start yourself. A feeling, fleeting and strange, that you are being held inside a trajectory larger than anything you planned. You've had that feeling. Maybe recently. Maybe it's why you're here right now. What I want to tell you, before we go anywhere else, is that the feeling is not imagination. It is not wishful thinking. It is not the mind trying to comfort itself with stories. What you felt in that moment was your energy field receiving a signal. Your aura, the measurable electromagnetic field that surrounds your body and extends several feet in every direction, responded to something before your conscious mind processed it. And the response it gave was this: something has changed. Something has been marked. Today, we are going to talk about what it means at the level of your actual energy field to be chosen. Not in the abstract, not as a metaphor, not as a comfort for hard times. We are going to look at what happens inside the quantum mechanics of your personal field when a life-level designation lands on you. When the trajectory you were built for begins to activate. When the pattern that was encoded into your energy from before you had language for any of this starts to become legible to you. Because here is what most people don't understand about the concept of being chosen. They think it means selected from the outside, picked by something external that looked at you and decided you were worthy. And that framing, while it carries emotional weight, misses the deeper mechanics entirely. Being chosen, in the language of your energy field, is not a selection event. It is an activation event. Something in you that was always present, always encoded, always radiating at a frequency that matched a specific destiny, reaches the moment where that frequency becomes coherent enough to begin organizing reality around it. You weren't chosen because you earned it. You were chosen because you carry it. And what is activating right now is the moment your field becomes strong enough, clear enough, coherent enough to begin broadcasting what you actually are. Let me show you the science underneath this. And then let me show you what your field is doing right now. And then I want to take you somewhere very specific, into a story, into a practice, into a layer of understanding about your own energy that most people never reach. Because you are not here by accident. And by the time we're done today, I want you to feel in your body, in your field, in the electromagnetic signature that precedes you into every room you enter, exactly what it means to carry a mark that was placed before you chose it. Let's begin with what your field actually is. Your heart generates the most powerful electromagnetic field in your body. This is not a metaphor or a spiritual claim. The HeartMath Institute has measured this field with precision. It extends in measurable, detectable electromagnetic energy up to several feet beyond the surface of your body in every direction. The electrical component of this field is approximately 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical activity of your brain. The magnetic component is approximately 5,000 times stronger than the magnetic field the brain generates. 5,000 times. This is not a subtle energy. This is a field that other instruments, other bodies, other nervous systems can detect without being told to look. Your heart is not just a pump. It is a broadcasting tower. And the signal it broadcasts carries something specific. It carries the emotional and energetic state of your entire system, encoded in the rhythm of its beats, in the coherence or incoherence of its rate variability, in the electromagnetic pattern it generates moment to moment. When you are in fear, the field broadcasts fear. When you are in grief, the field broadcasts grief. When you are in what the researchers at HeartMath call coherence, a specific state of synchronized, smooth, rhythmically ordered heart rate variability, the field broadcasts something different, something that other fields respond to differently, something that the quantum environment around you reads and reorganizes around. Now, here is the piece that matters for what we are talking about today. If this is landing for you, here's something I want to offer you before we go deeper. Have you spent years trying to feel lit up again? Visualizations, affirmations, vibration work, and the light still won't hold? Every one of those methods is telling you to push harder, do more, add another technique. It's not working because the issue isn't that you don't have enough light. 6 specific patterns are sitting on top of it. They're called the frequencies of forgetting. The remembering field, a quantum guide to returning to the light. You forgot you were carrying walks through all 5 parts of getting those patterns off you. Every tool you used tried to add more light. This one lifts what's been sitting on the light you already carry. The longer you wait, the harder they get to clear. So go open it tonight. The link is in the pinned comment below. Now, back to the thread we were following. The patterned signal your heart broadcasts, and why it holds the key to everything we are uncovering together. The heart does not broadcast a uniform signal. It broadcasts a patterned signal, and that pattern is not random. It is shaped by everything you carry: your history, your nervous systems, learned responses, your emotional baseline, your deepest convictions about yourself and reality. But it is also shaped by something that researchers are only beginning to understand how to measure. It is shaped by what some traditions call purpose, and what quantum biology is beginning to call coherence attractors, specific frequency signatures that the system naturally organizes around when it is functioning at its highest level of integration. In other words, your field has a home frequency, a signal it returns to when the noise is cleared, a pattern that represents not who you've been conditioned to be, but who you actually are at the level of your deepest energetic organization. And that home frequency is not generic. It is specific to you. It is the frequency of your particular purpose, your particular gift, your particular trajectory in this world. Being marked as chosen, in the language of your energy field, means this: your home frequency is beginning to become your dominant broadcast. The noise, the fear patterns, the conditioned dimming, the learned smallness is losing its grip on your field. And what was always underneath, the actual signal you were built to transmit, is rising, becoming coherent, becoming legible to the quantum field around you, which responds by beginning to assemble reality in alignment with it. This is the activation. This is what you felt. This is what is happening right now. But I want to go deeper into the mechanics, because understanding this at a surface level is not enough. You need to feel the precision of it. You need to understand not just that your field is activating, but how it activates, what it does when it does, and what the specific signature of a chosen field looks like at the level of measurable energy. Let me tell you about something called resonant entrainment. When two electromagnetic fields come into proximity, something remarkable happens. The fields begin to influence each other. If one field is significantly more coherent, more organized, more rhythmically stable than the other, the less coherent field tends to begin synchronizing with the more coherent one. This is not a mystical process. It is a well-documented phenomenon in physics called entrainment, and it happens between hearts, between nervous systems, between the electromagnetic field of a single person and the collective field of a group. You have experienced this without knowing the name for it. You have walked into a room and felt the energy shift, not because you tried to shift it, not because you performed anything, simply because your field, in that moment, was more coherent than the ambient field of the room. And the room began to organize itself around your signal. Conversations changed. People relaxed. Something opened. That was entrainment. That was your electromagnetic field doing what coherent fields do. They become the dominant frequency, and everything in proximity begins to synchronize with them. Now imagine what happens when the field you are broadcasting is not just coherent, but specifically, precisely tuned to a destiny-level frequency. When the signal your heart is generating is not just calm and organized, but carries the specific pattern of your purpose, your gift, your calling. The environment around you does not just relax. It reorganizes. It begins to deliver through what looks like coincidence and synchronicity and unexpected doors opening. The exact elements that belong to the trajectory your field is broadcasting. This is not magic. This is quantum resonance. Like frequencies attract, coherent fields organize their environments. And a field that is broadcasting at the frequency of its actual purpose begins to draw toward it everything that resonates with that purpose and begins to repel everything that doesn't. If this is landing for you, if you can feel the truth of it somewhere in your chest, I'd love for you to like this video and subscribe so we can keep exploring this together. You have felt both sides of this. You have felt the strange, inexplicable sense that something is being pulled toward you that you didn't chase. And you have felt the equally strange sense that things that used to fit your life no longer do. That certain relationships have become uncomfortable. That certain environments feel wrong in a way they didn't before. This is not failure. This is your field sharpening its signal. The things that don't resonate with your actual frequency are falling away because they cannot hold in the field of your coherence. And the things that do resonate are beginning to find their way to you through pathways that your logical mind could not have engineered. This is what activation looks like from the inside. It is not always comfortable. In fact, it is often disorienting, because the field that is rising in you is not the field you have been managing. It is not the field you built to survive. It is the field you were built to transmit. And those are not always the same thing. I want to sit with that for a moment, because it matters. Most of us have spent years, sometimes decades, building a version of our energy field that was optimized for a specific purpose: safety. We learned early and often that certain frequencies were acceptable and certain frequencies were not. That being too bright drew attention that felt dangerous. That being too certain drew criticism. That wanting too much led to disappointment. And so we dimmed, not because we chose to dim, but because dimming was the adaptation that kept us safe in the environments we were navigating. But here is what dimming costs you at the level of your energy field. When you suppress the natural coherence of your field, when you flatten your signal to avoid being seen, you are not just hiding. You are broadcasting a specific frequency, the frequency of suppression, the frequency of a field that is holding itself back from its own nature. And that frequency, like all frequencies, draws a response from the quantum environment around you. It draws circumstances that confirm the suppression, people and situations that seem to require you to stay small, a reality that appears to validate the decision to dim, because the reality is assembling itself around the dimmed signal. The moment you stop dimming, the moment your field begins to rise toward its actual coherence, everything around you has to reorganize, because the signal has changed, and a changed signal draws a different response. This is why the activation of a chosen field is so often preceded by a period of disruption, of things falling away, of the life that was built around the dimmed frequency becoming uncomfortable, ill-fitting, too small. This is not punishment. This is physics. The field is changing, and the environment is responding to the new signal by releasing what belongs to the old one, and beginning to assemble what belongs to the new. If you are in that period right now, I want you to hear this clearly. The disruption is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that something has gone right. Your field is broadcasting at a higher coherence. Reality is reorganizing around the new signal. What is falling away because it cannot resonate with what you are becoming. And what is coming because it can. Now let me tell you a story, because there is a kind of understanding that only comes through narrative, through following a life into its specific, particular details, and watching the mechanics of the field at work in the texture of actual human experience. Her name was Miriam. She grew up in a house where radiance was treated as a liability, not because anyone said so directly. It was subtler than that. It was in the way a room quieted when she walked in too brightly, in the way her mother's eyes would tighten when Miriam spoke too confidently about something she loved, in the way the family system seemed to breathe more easily when she made herself smaller, less certain, less present. Children are exquisitely sensitive instruments. They read the field of their environment with a precision that adults have often lost. And Miriam read hers clearly. Your light is too much. Turn it down. So she did. She became very good at it. She learned to enter rooms at a frequency that didn't disturb anything, to hold her opinions at a volume that didn't challenge anyone, to want things quietly, privately, in a way that left no electromagnetic trace in the shared field of her family. She was kind. She was competent. She was well-liked. And she was, at the level of her energy field, broadcasting a signal that said, I am not here. I am not claiming space. I am not a frequency that will ask anything of this environment. And the environment responded accordingly. It gave her what the signal asked for: a life that was fine, stable and fine, relationships that were comfortable and fine, work that was adequate and fine, a world that confirmed every day that she was a person for whom fine was the appropriate scale. She was 37 years old when something shifted. She couldn't have told you what it was. It wasn't a dramatic event. It wasn't a breakdown, or a revelation, or a voice. It was more like a sound she started hearing underneath everything. Very quiet, very persistent. Like a note being held by an instrument she couldn't locate. A frequency that didn't belong to the life she was living. That seemed to be coming from somewhere inside her that she hadn't visited in a very long time. She started noticing things. The way she felt physically heavier in certain rooms and physically lighter in others. The way certain conversations left her feeling like she'd been breathing shallow air for hours. And other conversations, rare ones, left her feeling like her chest had opened. The way certain people seemed to see something in her that she wasn't showing them. And she didn't know whether to be frightened or grateful. She started paying attention to her heart, not in a metaphorical way. Literally. She would put her hand on her chest and notice what she felt there. And what she began to notice was that the rhythm she had been living, the careful, contained, don't take up too much space rhythm, was not her natural rhythm. It was an adaptation. Underneath it, there was another rhythm, stronger, deeper, less apologetic. A rhythm that seemed to know something her managed self had been working very hard not to know. She didn't have language for this. She didn't know about electromagnetic fields, or heart coherence, or quantum resonance. She just knew that something was asking to be heard. Something in her field was rising, and the life she had built to hold herself small was beginning to feel like a garment that no longer fit. The disruption came first, as it always does. The job that had been fine became untenable. The relationship that had been comfortable revealed itself as a mirror of her dimming. Two people who had agreed, without saying so, to keep each other small. The friendships that had been easy became strained, because Miriam was no longer as easy as she had been. She was taking up more space, asking different questions, wanting different things. And the people who had been comfortable with the dimmed Miriam were not sure what to do with the Miriam whose field was beginning to broadcast at its actual frequency. Have you ever felt that shift in your own field? A moment when you walked into a room and something changed, when people responded to you differently, when you could feel your own energy expanding beyond what you usually allow? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Share what that felt like for you. She lost things. This is true, and I won't pretend otherwise. The activation of a chosen field is not painless. She lost the comfortable smallness. She lost the relationships that had been built on her suppression. She lost the version of herself that had been managing everyone else's comfort at the expense of her own coherence. But here is what she gained. She gained access to a frequency she had been carrying her entire life without knowing it. A signal that, once she stopped suppressing it, began to organize her environment in ways she could not have engineered. The work that found her was not work she had applied for. It was work that arrived through a chain of connections so unlikely that her logical mind would have dismissed them as coincidence if she hadn't started to understand that coincidence is what quantum resonance looks like from the outside. The people who found her were people who had been waiting, without knowing they were waiting, for exactly the frequency she was now broadcasting. The opportunities that opened were not opportunities she had pursued. They were opportunities that had been unable to reach her when her field was suppressed, and that rushed toward her the moment her signal became coherent enough to receive them. She told someone, much later, that it felt like she had been living in a house with all the curtains drawn for decades. And then one day, for reasons she couldn't fully explain, she opened them. And the light that came in was not new light. It had been outside the whole time. She had just been keeping it out. That's what your field does when it rises. It doesn't create something new. It allows what was always there, always waiting, always resonant with your actual frequency, to finally reach you. Miriam's story is your story, told in a specific life. The details are different. The dimming had a different shape, a different origin, a different texture, but the mechanics are the same. You have been broadcasting a signal that was shaped by survival rather than by your actual nature. And something in you is now rising toward the frequency you were built to transmit. And reality is beginning to reorganize around the new signal. This is the mark. This is what it means to be chosen, not selected from outside, activated from within. Now I want to do something with you. I want to take you into a practice that is specific to this moment, to what your field is doing right now, to the particular quality of activation that happens when a destiny-level frequency begins to rise in your energy system. This is not a generic breathing exercise. This is a practice designed to help you feel, in your body and your field, the specific sensation of your chosen frequency becoming coherent. Find a position where your spine can be long without being rigid. If you're lying down, let your body be fully supported. If you're sitting, let your feet be flat on the floor and your hands rest somewhere comfortable, perhaps on your thighs, perhaps on your heart. Take one breath that you don't manage. Let it come in at whatever depth it wants to come in. Let it go at whatever pace it wants to go. This is the first act of allowing rather than managing. Notice the difference in your body between a breath you control and a breath you allow. Now place one hand on your chest, over your heart. Not symbolically. Actually, feel the warmth of your palm against your sternum. Feel the weight of your hand. Feel the subtle movement of your chest as you breathe. Now I want you to do something that might feel unusual at first. I want you to breathe as if the breath is entering through your heart rather than through your nose. This is a heart math technique called heart-focused breathing, and it has measurable effects on heart rate variability and field coherence. The breath still enters through your nose and mouth, but your attention, your felt sense of where the breath is going, is directed to your heart center. Breathe in through your heart. Breathe out through your heart. Let each breath be slightly slower and slightly deeper than your normal breath. Not forced, just allowed to deepen. Do this for a few cycles and notice what happens in your chest. Most people feel a warmth, a softening, a quality of opening that is distinctly different from the tightness of managed breath. This is not imagination. This is your heart rate variability beginning to shift toward coherence. The rhythm of your heartbeats is smoothing. The electromagnetic field your heart is generating is becoming more ordered, more stable, more coherent. Now, while you maintain this heart-focused breathing, I want you to bring to mind a feeling, not a thought about a feeling, the actual felt sense of a specific emotion. I want you to find the feeling of being exactly right. Not good enough. Not acceptable. Exactly right. As if something that has been searching for you has finally found you and recognized you completely. The feeling of being seen at the level of your actual nature, not your performance, not your adaptation, your actual nature, and being told, yes, this is the one. This is who we've been waiting for. You may have felt this feeling before, in a moment of unexpected recognition, in a creative act that surprised you with its rightness, in a conversation where someone said something that landed in you like a key in a lock, in a moment of solitude where something in you simply knew, without evidence, that you were on the right path. Find that feeling, or the closest approximation of it that you can access right now. Let it be imperfect. Let it be a thread rather than a flood. Just find the direction of it and let your attention rest there. Now hold this together. The heart-focused breath and the felt sense of being exactly right. And notice what your field does, because what you are doing right now, in this moment, is not a visualization exercise. You are deliberately shifting the electromagnetic pattern your heart is generating. You are moving it toward coherence, and you are seeding that coherent field with the specific emotional frequency of recognition, of rightness, of being the one who was marked for this. Your heart is encoding that frequency into its electromagnetic broadcast, and your field is beginning to carry it. This is what it feels like when the chosen frequency rises. This warmth in your chest, this quality of expansion that doesn't feel like performance, this sense of something settling into place that has been hovering just outside your reach. This is your home frequency. This is the signal you were built to transmit. Stay here for as long as you want, and when you return to the words, carry the feeling with you. Because the practice is not over when the exercise ends. The practice is to let this feeling become your new baseline, to let this coherent, chosen frequency become the signal your field broadcasts by default rather than by effort. That is the shift. That is the activation. Now let me take you into something deeper, because there is a layer of this that we haven't touched yet, and it is the layer that most people, even people who understand energy and fields and coherence, never quite reach. It is the question of timing. Why now? If you carry a chosen frequency, if your field has always held the signal of your destiny, why does the activation happen at a specific moment? Why not 10 years ago? Why not 10 years from now? What is it about this particular point in time that corresponds to the rising of your field? The answer is in the mechanics of what researchers call phase transitions. In physics, a phase transition is the moment when a system that has been accumulating change suddenly reorganizes into a new state. Water doesn't gradually become ice. It reaches a specific temperature, a threshold, and then it transitions. The change was building for the entire cooling process, but the transition itself is sudden, specific, and irreversible. Your energy field works the same way. The movement toward your chosen frequency has not been sudden. It has been building. Through every experience that cracked your conditioning open a little further. Through every moment of courage that cost you something. Through every time you chose authenticity over safety, even in a small way. Through every loss that stripped away a layer of the dimming. All of it has been the slow cooling toward the threshold. And now you have reached it. The phase transition is happening. Your field is reorganizing into a new state. And that new state is not a gradual shift. It is a threshold crossing, a before and an after. This is why it can feel so sudden, why you can look back over the last weeks or months and feel like something changed that you didn't fully choose and can't fully explain. Because at the level of your energy field, something did change. The threshold was reached. The phase transition occurred. And the field that is broadcasting from you now is not the same field that was broadcasting 6 months ago, even if your external circumstances haven't fully caught up yet. External circumstances always lag behind field changes. This is one of the most important things to understand about how your aura creates your reality. The field changes first. Reality reorganizes second. There is always a gap, sometimes days, sometimes months, between the moment your field shifts and the moment the environment has fully assembled around the new signal. During that gap, it can look like nothing has changed. It can feel like the activation was imagined, like the feeling of rightness was a temporary state that has passed. It has not passed. The field has changed. Reality is in the process of reorganizing. What you are experiencing in the gap is the environment catching up to your signal. And the most important thing you can do in the gap is not to doubt the transition, not to collapse back into the old frequency out of impatience or fear, not to look at the external evidence and conclude that because it hasn't changed yet, the field hasn't changed. The field has changed. Hold the frequency. Let reality catch up. This is, in fact, the primary test of a chosen field. Not whether you can feel the activation. Most people can feel it. The test is whether you can maintain the frequency in the gap between the field shift and the environmental reorganization. Whether you can hold your coherence when the external evidence is lagging. Whether you can trust the signal your field is broadcasting when the world around you hasn't fully confirmed it yet. This is what the traditions meant when they talked about faith. Not belief in the absence of evidence. Coherence in the gap between the field shift and the environmental response. The ability to maintain your signal when the world hasn't yet assembled around it. This is not a spiritual virtue in the abstract. It is a specific, energetic skill. The skill of holding your home frequency stable enough, long enough for reality to reorganize around it. And here is the extraordinary thing about this skill. It is not something you build from scratch. It is something you access by removing what is in the way. The capacity to hold your frequency is already in you. It is the nature of your field to be coherent. It is the nature of your heart to broadcast at its home frequency. What gets in the way is not a lack of capacity. It is the accumulated weight of the conditioning, the learned dimming, the adapted suppression that has been running as a countersignal to your actual broadcast. Every time you release a layer of the dimming, you don't add something to your field. You remove an interference pattern, and the signal that was always there becomes clearer, stronger, more coherent, more able to hold itself in the gap. This is the work of the chosen field, not to build something new, to clear the interference so that what was always there can finally be heard. Let me go back to the science for a moment, because there is something specific I want you to understand about how your field interacts with other fields, and why this matters enormously for what is happening in your life right now. When your heart is in a state of high coherence, when the electromagnetic field it generates is ordered and rhythmically stable, something very specific happens in your interaction with other people. The field you generate begins to influence the autonomic nervous systems of people in your proximity. This has been measured. In studies of couples and in studies of therapists and clients, researchers have found that when one person's heart rate variability is in coherence, the other person's nervous system tends to shift toward greater regulation. Not because anything is said, not because any technique is applied, simply because the coherent field is present, and the less coherent field entrains to it. This means that when you are broadcasting at your chosen frequency, when your field is coherent and clear, and carrying the signal of your actual purpose, you are doing something to every person who comes into your proximity. You are offering their nervous system a template for coherence. You are, without trying, without performing, without doing anything except being fully in your own field, giving everyone around you access to a more ordered, more regulated, more coherent state. This is what it means to light up a room. Not a personality trait, not charisma in the conventional sense. It is the measurable electromagnetic influence of a coherent field on the less coherent fields around it. When you walk into a room at high coherence, the room's collective field begins to organize around your signal. People feel it as ease, as warmth, as the sense that something has relaxed. They don't know why. They just know that something shifted when you arrived. And when you walk into that same room with your field suppressed, with your signal dimmed, and your coherence compromised by fear or self-doubt or the effort of managing yourself, the room doesn't shift, or it shifts in the other direction, toward the contracted frequency you're broadcasting. People feel it as something slightly off, a quality of tension or heaviness that they can't locate but can feel. You have been in both states. You know the difference in your body. You know what it feels like to walk into a room fully present, fully in your field, not performing, but simply inhabiting your frequency. And you know what it feels like to walk into a room having already dimmed yourself in anticipation of what might be required of you there. The chosen frequency is the first state, the fully present, fully inhabited, fully coherent state. And the activation that is happening in you right now is the activation of your capacity to inhabit that state, not occasionally, not when conditions are perfect, but as your default, as the signal you broadcast, not because you are trying to, but because you have cleared enough of the interference that your natural coherence can hold itself. Now, I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in conversations about destiny and purpose and being chosen. I want to talk about what you are chosen for, specifically at the level of your energy field, because this is not a generic designation. Being marked as chosen is not a category. It is a specific signal. And your specific signal corresponds to a specific contribution that only your particular frequency can make. Think about the electromagnetic field of your heart as a signature, not a generic signal, but a signature, as specific and unrepeatable as a fingerprint. The pattern of your heart's electromagnetic broadcast is shaped by everything that makes you precisely you. The particular combination of gifts and wounds and perceptions and ways of seeing that no other person in the world has in exactly the same configuration. Your field is not interchangeable with anyone else's field. It carries information that is unique to you. And that unique information corresponds to a unique function, a specific way that your particular frequency serves the larger field, a specific gap in the world's coherence that your signal, and only your signal, can fill. This is what the traditions were pointing at when they talked about calling. Not a role assigned from outside, a function that emerges from the specific nature of your field. The thing that happens in the world when you are fully broadcasting your actual frequency that cannot happen any other way. You have glimpsed this in the moments when you were most fully yourself, most fully inhabiting your field, most fully broadcasting your actual signal rather than your adapted one. Something happened in the world around you that could not have happened without you. A person was reached. A problem was solved. A creative act was completed. A connection was made. And you felt, in the aftermath, not pride exactly, but rightness. The specific satisfaction of a frequency that has found its function. That is the mark. That is what you carry. That is what is activating. And here is what I want you to understand about the specificity of your calling, your function, your chosen frequency. It is not abstract. It is not somewhere in the future. It is not waiting for you to become ready. It is present in you right now, in the specific texture of what moves you, what breaks your heart open, what makes you lose track of time, what you would do even if no one ever acknowledged it, what you find yourself thinking about in the quiet moments when you are not performing anything for anyone. These are not random preferences. They are the fingerprints of your field, the specific contours of your electromagnetic signature expressing themselves in the language of desire and attention and care. The things that call to you are calling to you because they resonate with your home frequency, because they are in the same key as the signal you were built to broadcast, because your field recognizes them as belonging to the trajectory it is organized around. Pay attention to them, not as hobbies or interests or things you might pursue someday when conditions allow. Pay attention to them as data about your field, as information about the specific frequency you carry and the specific function that frequency is designed to serve. Because the activation of your chosen field is not separate from these things. It is expressed through them. And I want to ask you something, right here in this moment. Has there been a time when you felt your own light activate? When you noticed your warmth reaching someone? Or felt the temperature of a room shift simply because you were fully present in it? Leave that in the comments. These moments matter, and sharing them adds to the collective field we are building together in this space. Let me bring you back into the story for a moment, because there is a second character I want you to meet. His name was Daniel, and he knew from the time he was very young that he carried something. Not in an arrogant way, in a way that was almost uncomfortable, a sense of being calibrated for something specific that he couldn't name, a frequency in his field that seemed to exceed the containers available to him. He was the child who asked questions that made adults uncomfortable, the teenager whose intensity was too much for the social environments he was navigating, the young man whose ambitions were treated as delusions by people who loved him but couldn't see what his field was broadcasting. And so he did what many people with powerful fields do when the world can't hold them. He turned the power inward. He used the intensity of his frequency not to broadcast, but to excavate. He became a person of extraordinary internal depth and almost no external expression. His field was full. His life was empty. He had learned, through years of having his signal treated as too much, to keep the broadcast private. He was in his mid-40s when he met someone who could see his field, not literally, but in the way that certain people who are themselves broadcasting at high coherence, can feel the suppressed signal in another person's field, can sense the gap between what someone is carrying and what they are transmitting, can feel the weight of a frequency that has been held back for too long. This person said something simple to him, not a revelation, not a dramatic intervention. Just this: you are broadcasting at about 10% of your actual signal, and the world is responding to the 10%. It has no idea what the other 90% contains. Daniel sat with this for a long time because he knew it was true. He had always known it was true. He had simply never had anyone name it. The question was not whether to broadcast. The question was whether he was willing to face what had made him suppress the signal in the first place. Whether he was willing to go back to the moments where the world had told him his frequency was too much and choose differently. Not to rewrite the past, but to release the conclusions he had drawn from it. The conclusion that his frequency was a problem, that his signal was too intense, that the world could not hold what he carried. Because those conclusions, drawn in specific moments of specific pain, had become the primary interference pattern in his field. The thing that was preventing his natural coherence from broadcasting at its actual amplitude. He wasn't suppressing his signal because he lacked courage. He was suppressing it because he had concluded, from real evidence in real moments, that broadcasting at full amplitude was dangerous. The work for Daniel was not to build a bigger signal. It was to dismantle the conclusion, to go back to the moments where the world had failed to hold his frequency, and understand that the world's failure to hold it was not evidence that the frequency was wrong. It was evidence that those particular environments were not calibrated for it, that he had been in the wrong rooms, not that he was the wrong frequency. This is a distinction that changes everything. When the world cannot hold your signal, the interpretation matters enormously. If you conclude that your signal is too much, you dim. If you conclude that you haven't found the rooms that are calibrated for your frequency yet, you keep broadcasting and you find different rooms. Daniel found different rooms, not all at once, not without fear. But he began carefully and then with increasing confidence to let his field broadcast at its actual amplitude in specific contexts where he sensed it would be received. And what he found was what every person finds when they stop dimming and start broadcasting. The world that had seemed unable to hold his frequency had been waiting for it. There were people, many more than he had expected, whose fields were calibrated exactly for the signal he carried, who had been waiting, without knowing they were waiting, for the frequency he had been suppressing, whose lives shifted measurably and sometimes dramatically in the presence of his coherent broadcast. He hadn't needed to be less. He had needed to find the environments where being fully himself was not too much, but exactly right. You are in the process of finding those environments. The activation of your chosen field includes, necessarily, the reorganization of your external circumstances toward the rooms that can hold your frequency. The people, the contexts, the opportunities, the collaborations that are calibrated for the signal you carry. And as your field rises toward its actual coherence, those rooms will find you. Because that is what coherent fields do. They draw what resonates and release what doesn't. They organize their environments around their signal. They become, through the simple act of broadcasting clearly, the attractor for everything that belongs to their frequency. Now let me give you something practical. Not a practice this time, but a framework. A way of understanding what is happening in your life right now through the lens of your field, so that you can navigate the activation with clarity rather than confusion. There are 3 distinct phases to the activation of a chosen field. Most people experience all 3, and most people misread at least one of them. The first phase is the rising. This is the phase where your home frequency begins to assert itself over the adapted frequency you have been broadcasting. It often feels like restlessness, like the life you have been living has become too small, too tight, too misaligned with something you can feel but can't quite name. Relationships and environments that were comfortable become uncomfortable. The things that used to satisfy you no longer do. You find yourself wanting something different without being able to specify what. This is not a crisis. This is your field beginning to broadcast at a higher amplitude. The discomfort is the sensation of expansion pressing against the boundaries of a life that was sized for the smaller signal. The second phase is the clearing. This is the phase where what doesn't belong to your actual frequency begins to fall away. Jobs, relationships, habits, self-concepts, even physical environments can shift during this phase. It can feel like loss. It often is loss, in the sense that real things that were part of your life are no longer there. But at the level of your field, this is not loss. It is release. The clearing is the field releasing interference patterns, releasing the things that were keeping the signal suppressed, releasing the environments that required you to dim. And this release, however painful it feels from inside the experience, is the necessary precondition for the third phase. The third phase is the assembly. This is where reality begins to organize around your new signal, where the people, opportunities, circumstances, and resources that are calibrated for your actual frequency begin to arrive. Where the doors that were closed to the dimmed signal begin to open to the coherent one. Where the life that belongs to your chosen frequency begins to take visible shape. Most people are somewhere in the first or second phase when they start to feel the activation. The third phase is what they are moving toward. And the most important thing to understand about the movement from phase 2 to phase 3 is that it is not something you engineer. It is something you allow. By maintaining the coherence of your field, by refusing to collapse back into the dimmed frequency out of impatience or fear, by trusting the signal your field is broadcasting, even when the environment hasn't fully reorganized around it yet. Hold your frequency. Let reality catch up. This is the entire instruction for the gap between phases 2 and 3. I want to stay with the clearing phase for a moment longer, because it is the phase that most often causes people to misread the activation as failure. And the misreading is costly, because when you interpret the clearing as evidence that something has gone wrong, you tend to do the one thing that actually does slow the process. You contract. You pull your field back toward the old frequency. You make yourself smaller again in an attempt to stop the losses. And in doing so, you reestablish the interference pattern that the clearing was in the process of removing. The clearing is not random. Every specific thing that falls away during this phase falls away because it was structurally dependent on your dimmed signal. It was held in place not by genuine resonance with your actual frequency, but by the suppression of it. Think about the relationships that become uncomfortable when you start broadcasting more fully. They weren't relationships built on your actual frequency. They were relationships built on your management of yourself, on your willingness to stay at a volume that didn't challenge anything. When your volume rises, the relationship has to either expand to hold the new signal or reveal that it was never built for it. The ones that reveal they weren't built for it are not failed relationships. They are relationships that served the function of the dimmed phase and cannot serve the function of the coherent one. Their falling away is not a loss. It is a completion. The same is true of work, of habits, of self-concepts. The job that becomes untenable during the clearing was a job sized for the suppressed signal. The habit that no longer satisfies was a habit that served the management of your frequency rather than the expression of it. The self-concept that begins to feel like a costume rather than a skin was a self-concept built to navigate the world at the dimmed amplitude. As your field rises, these structures become ill-fitting, not because you have changed for the worse, but because you are changing toward your actual nature. And your actual nature cannot be held in the containers that were built for the adapted one. This is the clearing. It is precise. It is purposeful. And every specific thing it removes is a specific interference pattern that was sitting between your adapted signal and your home frequency. Trust it, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because the pain of the clearing is the sensation of something being removed that was never yours to carry in the first place. Let me take you into one more layer of the science, because there is something about the quantum mechanics of a chosen field that I haven't said yet, and it is perhaps the most extraordinary thing of all. In quantum physics, there is a phenomenon called non-local correlation. The discovery that two particles, once they have interacted, remain connected in a way that transcends physical distance. When something happens to one particle, the other particle responds instantaneously, regardless of how far apart they are. This is not a metaphor. It is one of the most rigorously tested and verified phenomena in all of physics. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. The experiments have confirmed it beyond any reasonable doubt. Now, what does this have to do with your energy field? Your field has interacted with many fields over the course of your life. The people you have loved, the environments you have inhabited, the collective fields you have been part of. And through those interactions, correlations have been established. Not just memories, not just relationships. Actual quantum correlations between your field and the fields of everything your field has touched. This means that when your field rises toward coherence, the effect is not limited to your immediate physical environment. The shift in your signal propagates through those non-local correlations to every field your field has ever touched. People you haven't spoken to in years feel something shift. Situations you thought were closed begin to move again. Opportunities that seemed to have passed begin to reassemble. Because the fields that are non-locally correlated with yours are responding to the change in your signal, even across distance, even across time. This is why, when people go through a genuine activation of their chosen field, they so often report hearing from people they hadn't thought about in years, or finding that situations they had given up on suddenly open, or discovering that something they had released as gone is not gone at all, just waiting for the signal to change. Your field is not isolated. It is embedded in a web of correlations that extends far beyond what you can see. And when your signal becomes coherent, the entire web responds, not in ways you can predict or engineer, in ways that are specific to the non-local correlations your field has established over the course of your life, in ways that are, from the inside, indistinguishable from grace. This is the quantum mechanics of the chosen field. The signal rises. The coherence establishes. The non-local web responds. Reality reorganizes. Not just in your immediate environment, everywhere your field has ever touched. You are not just changing your life. You are sending a signal through every connection your field has ever made. And every field that is correlated with yours is receiving that signal right now. Let that land. I want to add one more dimension to the non-local picture, because there is a specific quality of this phenomenon that is directly relevant to what you are experiencing in your life right now. And it is something that the physics points to, but that most people haven't fully integrated into their understanding of how their field works. When the HeartMath researchers began studying the electromagnetic field of the heart in relationship to other people, one of the things they found was that the effect of a coherent heart field on another person's nervous system was not diminished by the absence of physical proximity in the way that classical physics would predict. In other words, the influence of a coherent field on a correlated field does not simply drop off with distance, the way a radio signal weakens as you drive away from the tower. The correlation itself seems to carry the influence, independent of the spatial relationship between the two fields. What this means, practically, is this: the people who are meant to be part of your trajectory, the ones whose fields are genuinely calibrated for your frequency, are not only findable through physical proximity and conventional networking and the logical engineering of your social circumstances. They are findable through the coherence of your field itself. When your signal becomes clear and strong and stable, it propagates through the web of non-local correlations your field has established, and it begins to draw toward you through pathways that will look like coincidence from the outside. The specific people and circumstances that are in resonance with your home frequency. This is not passive. It requires you to hold your signal, to maintain the coherence of your field, rather than collapsing it back toward the adapted frequency when the evidence of connection hasn't yet appeared. But it is also not the kind of effortful, strategic, exhausting work of trying to engineer your circumstances through willpower and planning alone. It is the work of coherence, of returning to your home frequency again and again, of broadcasting clearly and trusting that the web your field is embedded in is already responding to the new signal, even before you can see the response. This is a fundamentally different relationship to the work of building your life. Instead of asking, "What do I need to do to make this happen?" the question becomes, "What interference patterns am I still running that are preventing what is already moving toward me from reaching me?" The shift is from construction to clearing, from adding to removing, from engineering to allowing. And it is a shift that your field is already prepared for, because the coherence you are moving toward is not something you have to build. It is something you have to uncover. Now let me bring you back to something I said earlier about the specificity of the mark, about the fact that your chosen frequency is not a generic designation, but a precise electromagnetic signature that corresponds to a precise function in the world. I want to go deeper into what that function actually feels like from the inside, because I think most people have a relationship to the concept of their purpose that is too abstract, too far in the future, too dependent on some dramatic external confirmation that has not yet arrived. Your function is not waiting for you in the future. It is not contingent on the right circumstances or the right platform or the right level of readiness. It is present in you right now, in the specific quality of your attention and care and perception. And the clearest evidence of it is not in what you have achieved, but in what you cannot stop noticing. There are things in the world that you notice that other people walk past, problems that land in you as personal when they are technically not your problem, gaps in the world's coherence that you feel in your body as a kind of ache, a specific discomfort that says something is missing here, and I can feel what it is. People whose pain you can sense before they have said anything about it. Possibilities that you can see clearly in situations where everyone else only sees the obstacle. Connections between things that seem unrelated to everyone else, but that your field recognizes as part of the same pattern. These are not personality quirks. They are the specific attunements of your electromagnetic signature, the precise frequencies within your field that are calibrated to detect and respond to the specific gaps in the world that your function is designed to fill. The things you cannot stop noticing are the things your field was built to address. And the ache you feel when you see them and don't act on them is the sensation of a frequency that is being prevented from doing what it was built to do. The activation of your chosen field is, among other things, the activation of your capacity to act on what you cannot stop noticing. To stop managing the ache and start following it. To let the specific attunements of your electromagnetic signature guide you toward the specific function they were built for. Not because you have figured out the whole plan, not because you can see the intuitive trajectory, but because your field can feel the next step. And the next step is always enough. This is how the chosen field navigates, not by mapping the entire journey in advance, by staying coherent enough to feel the next resonant step, by trusting the attunements of your field as navigational instruments, by following what your field recognizes as belonging to your frequency, even when your logical mind cannot yet explain why. And here is the thing about following the attunements of your field. It requires a specific kind of courage that is different from the courage of pushing through fear. It is the courage of trusting information that doesn't come through conventional channels, of acting on what your field knows before your mind has caught up, of making decisions that look inexplicable from the outside because they are based on a kind of knowing that is electromagnetic rather than cognitive. This is the courage of the chosen field, not the heroic, dramatic courage of facing external danger, the quieter, stranger, more demanding courage of trusting your own signal. You have this courage. You have been using it in small ways for longer than you know. Every time you chose authenticity over performance in a moment when performance would have been safer. Every time you followed an intuition that your logical mind couldn't justify. Every time you trusted a feeling in your chest over an argument in your head. Every one of those moments was your chosen field asserting itself. Was your home frequency breaking through the interference? Was the signal you were built to broadcast finding a way out through the cracks in the suppression? Those moments are not anomalies. They are previews. They are your field showing you what it looks like when it broadcasts at its actual amplitude. And the activation that is happening right now is the process of those moments becoming not the exception, but the rule. Not the breakthrough, but the baseline. Not the crack in the suppression, but the dissolution of the suppression itself. Now, I want to come back to you, to the specific moment you are in, to the feeling that brought you here, to whatever quality of recognition or restlessness or readiness that made this particular moment the moment for this particular conversation. You are in the activation, whether it is just beginning or well underway, whether you are in the rising or the clearing or the first signs of the assembly. You are in the activation. Your field is moving toward its home frequency. The signal you were built to broadcast is becoming more coherent, and reality, in its quantum responsiveness to your electromagnetic broadcast, is beginning to reorganize. The question is not whether this is happening. It is. The question is whether you will cooperate with it, whether you will choose, consciously and deliberately, to hold your frequency in the gap, to release the interference patterns that have been keeping your signal suppressed, to trust the activation even when the external evidence is lagging, to inhabit your chosen frequency, not as a performance, but as a practice, moment by moment, breath by breath, field by field. This is the choice that the chosen are given, not the choice of whether to carry the frequency. That was already decided, encoded into your field before you had language for it. The choice is whether to broadcast it, whether to stop managing your signal down to a level that feels safe and start letting it rise to the level it was built for, whether to cooperate with the activation or to resist it out of the fear that a brighter signal will draw more than you know how to handle. You can handle it. Your field is built for it. The frequency you carry is not too much for the world. It is exactly the right amount for the specific function you were built to serve. And the world, the specific part of the world that is calibrated for your signal, is waiting for you to stop dimming and start broadcasting. Let me give you one more practice before we close. This one is specifically for the gap, for the moments when the activation feels real, but the evidence hasn't caught up, for the times when the old frequency tries to reassert itself because the new one hasn't yet produced visible results. This is a practice for maintaining coherence in the space between the field shift and the environmental response. Find your heart-focused breath again. Just a few cycles. Let the rhythm of your breathing smooth and deepen. Let your attention rest in your chest. Now bring to mind the specific feeling of your chosen frequency, the feeling of being exactly right, the feeling of being the one who was marked for this, not as a thought, as a felt sensation in your body, even a thread of it, even the direction of it, without the full flood. And now speak silently or aloud this specific declaration, not as an affirmation you are trying to convince yourself of, as a statement of what your field is already broadcasting, as a description of what is already true at the level of your electromagnetic signal. My field is coherent. My signal is clear. The frequency I carry is real, and it is rising. What belongs to my trajectory is already moving toward me. I don't need to chase it. I need to hold my signal. I need to stay in my field. I need to let my light be on. Say it, or something like it, in the words that feel most true to your specific frequency. And then sit with the feeling of it. Let your heart encode it into the electromagnetic field it is broadcasting. Let your field carry it into the quantum environment around you. Let the declaration become not a thought, but a signal. This is the practice of the chosen field, not the dramatic moment of activation, which has already happened, but the daily, deliberate, sometimes quiet and unglamorous work of holding your frequency, of returning to your home signal when the noise pulls you away from it, of choosing again and again to broadcast what you actually are rather than what you have been conditioned to perform. Every return to coherence is a renewal of the signal. Every moment of heart-focused presence is a strengthening of the broadcast. Every choice to inhabit your actual frequency rather than your adapted one is a vote for the reality that is assembling around your chosen signal. You don't have to get this perfect. Coherence is not a fixed state. It is a practice of return. The field drifts. You notice? You return. The field drifts again. You notice again. You return again. Each return is not a failure recovered from. Each return is the practice itself. The act of returning to your home frequency is the act of broadcasting it. And the more you practice the return, the shorter the drift becomes, and the longer the coherence holds. This is how the chosen field stabilizes, not through a single dramatic moment of permanent transformation, through the accumulated weight of 1,000 small returns to the frequency you were built to carry. I want to close by saying something that I hope you will carry with you long after this transmission ends. The mark on you is not a burden. I know it can feel that way sometimes. The sense of being built for something larger than your current circumstances can accommodate. The feeling of carrying a frequency that the world hasn't always known what to do with. The loneliness, sometimes, of being calibrated for a function that not everyone around you can see or understand. These are real experiences. They are part of what it means to carry a chosen field. But the mark is not a burden. It is a gift, not in the saccharine sense of the word, in the literal sense. Something was given to you, a frequency, a function, a signal that the world specifically needs, not a generic signal. Your specific signal. The particular pattern of your electromagnetic field, shaped by everything you are and everything you have survived, and everything you have learned, and everything you love, is a gift to the specific part of the world that is calibrated to receive it. And the activation that is happening right now is the moment that gift begins to be given. Not held in reserve, not managed down to a safe amplitude, given at full coherence to the world that has been waiting for it. You were marked before you chose it. The frequency was encoded before you had language for it. The trajectory was set before you understood where it was going. And all of it, every experience that cracked you open, every loss that stripped away a layer of the dimming, every moment of courage that cost you something, every return to your home frequency when the noise was loudest, all of it has been the preparation, the slow building toward the threshold, the accumulation of coherence that makes the phase transition possible. You have crossed the threshold. The activation is real. The signal is rising. Reality is reorganizing around your frequency. And what is assembling around you right now in the quantum field that reads and responds to your electromagnetic broadcast is the life that belongs to the signal you actually carry, not the life that was sized for the dimmed version, the life that is calibrated for the full broadcast, the relationships, the work, the opportunities, the collaborations, the circumstances that are in resonance with your home frequency. They are assembling. The field has changed. Reality is catching up. If this transmission has moved something in your field, consider returning to it in the morning, stillness, before the day fills with noise, or in the quiet before sleep, when your field is most open and receptive. And if someone in your life is carrying a light they have forgotten, share this with them. When you do, something real happens between your fields. Their awareness of their own frequency activates. Your coherence deepens through the act of offering. And together, you contribute to a larger luminosity that neither of you could generate alone. That is the ripple. That is what sharing a signal does. Hold your frequency. Trust the signal. Let your light be on. Not because you should, not because you are trying to, because that is what you are, a field of quantum energy, broadcasting at the frequency of your chosen purpose, drawing toward you everything that belongs to your trajectory and releasing everything that doesn't. Your field is coherent. Your signal is clear. Your destiny is activating. And it has been moving toward this moment your entire life.